One of the easiest ways to understand neoclassicism is to contrast it with Rococo. Treat it as an opposite, a retort to a painting like Fragonard's The Swing. Here on the right, we're looking at the French painter David, perhaps the greatest 18th century neoclassicist, his painting, The Oath of the Horatii, one of the most profound examples of what classicism is about. An artwork like The Swing can be analyzed in terms of style, all these delicate textures, the bright yet soft colors, the intricate composition with lots of dainty details, the leaves of foliage, of trees and bushes, the lacy trim on her garment, as well as the soft, flowing brushwork that expresses this playful yet elegant world. So we can also talk about the Rococo in terms of subject matter, right? These are the so-called beautiful people of the 18th century, the aristocrats. We are looking at a celebration of their pleasures, flirtations, their culture, their lifestyle, art, wit, sophistication. We can also talk about an artwork in terms of its context for which it's made, its audience, where and how it would have been seen. This is a critically important idea. So a painting like The Swing is commissioned for a private patron, a private aristocrat displayed in their interior, such as their salon, where it would have promoted witty dialogue, playful, mischievous commentary, and be part of their socializing. If we apply style, subject matter, and situation to our analysis here of David's painting, look how different it is on every level. So this neoclassical style is about extraordinary precision and control. It is about a kind of discipline that is actually being represented here and being shown, demonstrated, activated in the way the painting is made, with all these firm lines. Look at the line work that defines the floor. This is incredibly well done. It feels so three-dimensional. The linear perspective involves very precise calculations about how to make those right angles intersect, how to make those lines move backwards at just the right slanting angle to create a sense of recession of space. Look also at the very disciplined definition of anatomy, the study of a kneecap, the study of a gastrocnemius muscle and a soleus muscle, the ability to make the body so perfectly proportioned and also beautifully proportioned, an ideal body. This is a very important part of neoclassicism. But in terms of subject matter, this is also a classical story. We'll look at this painting in more depth, and it is actually a story of ancient Roman heroism in a battle between the Horatii and the Curii, which are two competing factions that are actually related. So it's also about civil war. Very interesting point. We'll talk more about that. This is on the eve of the French Revolution. But let's backtrack. This is neoclassical because its subject matter is a story told in the grand manner. We feel a sense of heroism, of mighty themes and actions, and it is supposed to give an uplifting moral message about the patriotic virtue. In terms of the context, this is not for the salon of a woman like Madame Pompadour. This is for the display at the Salon Carré. This is created through the Royal Academy, the French Academy. Remember, this is an elite art institution subsidized by the French government. And a work like David's was displayed for the public in the Salon in the Louvre, where people would come to admire, to comment on, and to learn from a painting like this, to get a sense of themselves as people of the French nation and their aspirations. That's what this is supposed to express. So looking at this engraving that you've already seen of the Salon of 1785, you could actually see right here, there's David's neoclassical painting high up as a kind of elevated statement. So An artwork like this is supposed to promote the supremacy of academic art. It is supposed to glorify king, nation, France. And I say here that it displays the results of long, systematic, disciplined training. Because neoclassicism of the 18th century is related to how the academies taught painters to be painters like David, what they thought was important. They taught them a classical, disciplined curriculum in which they learned in systematic ways how to measure space the way David did to create those floor tiles, how to do those anatomical details by studying artworks from the classical past, sculpture, drawing from sculpture, then drawing from life. This is about knowledge that is based on systematic curriculum, based on tried and true principles. So in London, when the artist Joshua Reynolds, who has the title Sir Joshua Reynolds because he is elevated to noble status based on his achievements, he gives a discourse, a lecture at the Royal Academy of Art in London. And he says the principal example of an academy is that it will be a repository for the great examples of art. So neoclassicism is bound up with the idea of greatness, and that these are models that should be emulated. The idea is that art ought to be an excellence that comes from accumulated experience of the past. This is not about art as an artist pursuing their own feelings, the way Rembrandt in his late years is being expressive and free and creating challenging artworks. This is about actually knowing what are the correct principles. Academic neoclassicism is about rules, the rules of art, the rules of architecture. So your textbook authors dive more deeply into neoclassicism, focusing on the grand tour, the tradition that privileged young men would travel from a place like Britain or America and go to Paris, but especially go to Italy, to Rome, because the idea was the kind of knowledge that mattered for the elites, the kind of knowledge that would actually apply to a well-run government was the knowledge from Greece and Rome. They give a nice discussion here of the style. Neoclassical paintings reflect the clear forms, tight compositions, and shallow space of ancient relief sculpture. You saw that with David. They also explain how this isn't just about the look, this is about ideas associated with that style. The ancient world was considered the source of British and European democracy, secular government, and civilized thought and action. So the very ideas and ideals that were being expressed by these Enlightenment philosophers like Diderot seem to be embodied in the remains of the Greek and Roman past. And in fact, I want to stress one point here that is mentioned very quickly, but it's so important. At this time, when privileged young men are going to Italy and Rome to study the classical past, recently discovered and excavated were the sites of Pompeii and Herculaneum, ancient Roman cities that had actually been buried in a volcanic eruption. Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, and the entire neighborhoods were buried under lava. This was an early archaeological site in which they were able to uncover the preserved homes, villas, dwellings of the Romans. In terms of art history, this is a fantastic find because entire villas with painted frescoes were dug out and the frescoes preserved. So you see here painting from around 79 CE that gets discovered around 1761 when artists begin to actually use those Roman frescoes as models for the interior decoration of rich aristocratic homes. There becomes a massive fashion for making your home look like one of these Roman villas uncovered after the volcano. And in fact, there's also a fashion for wearing clothes inspired by Roman and Greek style. It's important that the authors state that these were systematic excavations. the championing of reason, of science, of methodical discoveries and investigation. That was all part of the 18th century, and it wasn't just science as we know science. It was also part of a new study of history and the past. So these excavations were approached in a kind of scientific way, attempting to uncover things systematically to be able to date and study accurately. This is part of a new historical consciousness. The 18th century brings to people's awareness a new precision of history as a process of change, the past as a lost time that was different from our time. And although there's an attempt to kind of revive that, we're going to see that there's also a kind of dawning sense of history as the breaking away from what is past. And this will be very important when we talk about Romanticism. This historical consciousness is the beginning of a sense of understanding time as a process of change that actually will be part of what will allow Darwin in the mid-19th century to form the ideas he forms as he begins to think about the evolution of species. There is a growing historical consciousness of the evolution of culture at this point, which is why when your textbook authors talk about neoclassicism in Rome and they mention this artist Mengs, they mention Winckelmann, his friend. Winckelmann's often considered the founder of art history because he's looking at classical Greek sculpture, classical art, and he's championing it as the best, but he's also thinking about it as having evolved through a process of evolutionary development, a process of change over time that can be broken up into periods, just as we are studying from the 17th century Baroque to the 18th century. We are building on Winckelmann's insights of a period style as historical experience changes.